It's another word for a ragamuffin. And there we have Pappy. And whose turn? Yes, Clare, it's your turn.
Well, the Pappy was the title bestowed by the Anglo-Indians on their gardeners. Their head gardeners, actually. Now, Pappy being an anglicisation of a Hindi word for head gardener, of course.
Grandpappy.
I beg your pardon?
Grandpappy?
Well, no, you see, it comes from a Hindi word, so it would be more pappe, I think. Don't you?
Grandpappy.
Yes, I would think so. So when a Saab or Mensab wanted some flowers cut to go on the veranda when they were having their tiffin, they would call their pappy to please...
When they were having their what?
Tiffin?
Tiffin?
Yes, that's drinkies. Drinkies in the evening.
Also a Hindu word?
No, that's very Anglo-Indian. Indian. So they'd call their pappy to please go and get some flowers.
Right. Frank Muir's go.
In the year 1430 AD...
Exactly.
In Aldgate, in the city of London, was opened a cold harbour, or simple shelter for indigent Roman Catholic priests who'd fallen upon hard times and were short of a swift buck and a crust. This hostel in Aldgate became hugely popular and well known, and possibly because of its Catholic connection, it was known in the 15th century in Aldgate as, you tell me, the Pappy.
They were all Roman Catholic priests, weren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That's it, Frank.
That's it, is it?
Well, most of them.
Yes. Yes.
Except the ones who weren't pappies.
I tell you what, they weren't indigent, though.
Let us now call on Robin Bailey.
Pappy is a sort of dressing which a prudent weaver, linen weaver, would apply to the web of his loom before he starts weaving. And it's compounded of flour, gelatin, and water, and it makes a kind of paste. And it's pasted not only over the warp, but over the woof of the loom. Its purpose being to reduce the risk of fraying. I should think if you pasted enough of it over the woof, you might stop it from barking as well. That's it.
I say, I think he's bidding for your seat, Frank, you know.
I think a fairly stiff memo.
Yeah, I think so afterwards, yes, I think so. Absolutely right. Anyway, what they say it's this dressing, this sort of gunge put on looms. It's a hostel, or was a hostel, and it is a head gardener, or was, in India. Rula, your choice.
I have no idea, basically. I think they're all rubbish. The Anglo-Indian, it sounds more like African pappy, doesn't it? Like, one of those. The sticky paste for weaving.
You're not,
Why would
you're
you
not in
stick
favour of
it?
that? What?
Why would you stick it?
I explained at some
it would
length.
get terribly uncomfortable to have sticky cloth, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Good thinking, but...
And you're terribly accurate on your dates, Frank. 1430 exactly.
It's my métier, madame.
Roman Catholic priests. Well, Il Papa. Could be, I suppose. I think I'll go for that, for the shelter for Roman Catholic priests in Aldgate.
Oh, that was what Frank said.
Oh, yes.
True or bluff, Frank?
I'm very glad you did.
Yes. It was indeed that hostel. 3-3 Arthur. Who knows what may happen? Luderick is the next word. Arthur, your turn.
Luderick was the name given in the First World War by the South African Army for a small scout car that they used in fighting in the Germans in German East Africa. And it was named not after Luderick Kennedy.
Arthur.
Excellent.
But after a suburb of Bloemfontein, where the particular scout car, the Luderick, was manufactured.
Right. Arthur made a joke. Oh, dear. Tim Brooke-Taylor now.
I'd like you to come with me to Australia once more, as we did last week. The luderick is formally known in Australian fishing circles as Girella tricuspidata. Not after a few tubes of Foster's, it's not, but it's in fact a distant relative.
In Tim,
It's a distant relative in more ways than one of the British perch, being a freshwater fish with a silver belly and spiny fins, quite common at the mouth of the Flinders River. Australian fish like a perch.
OK. Rula, Lenska.
From Australia, let me swiftly fly you to Canada, where luderick is a word named after a man called Martin Luderick, who was a very famous ice skater in the 1930s. And a luderick is a jump on ice skates over an obstacle. He made it famous by jumping over barrels. I think 3 barrels was his furthest jump. A running jump on ice skates over barrels. It's sometimes called a luder.
So it's a jump, a famous sort of jump in ice skating, a scouting sort of car, and a fish, an Australian fish. Frank's choice.
Are we in a hurry to finish?
Well, no, we can get
Can I
another word in
cogitate?
if we carry on speedily.
I'm not sure you're no
Canter
word.
along.
I thought it was a lewd limerick, but it's very easy to say a thing as a Canadian ice skating jump, or a fish, or a bit of heraldry, and you can't do anything about it. The only one which isn't that sort of easy thing is this wretched scout car, but is it it? Is it it? Yes, flash the card out.
It was Arthur. True or bluff, Art?
How did you guess?
Uncanny.
I thought you deserved to lose with that pun, Arthur, but I see you haven't. Who gave the true definition, please? Yes, a luderick is a fish. Let us have the last word. We'll have to speed along like I don't know what. Frank, what about Scodgy?
Scodgy is a twig bent into a U shape which a thatcher uses to hold the thatch until he's ready to tie it up properly.
Do nicely. Robin?
It was a Scottish nickname for a household drudge, somebody who was given all the dirty jobs to do.
And Clare?
It's a children's game played with a small top, and they have to hop and skip before the top stops spinning.
Stop, tops. Good. Well done. It's a drudge. It's a Thatcher's sort of peg thing. Turn it down like that. And it's a child's game. Now, Arthur.
Oh, I think...
they were so swift you can haver a little.
Oh, no.
I think I'm
If
playing
such
for
is your
time.
fancy.
If we go on long enough.
No, I think you now have to say.
Okay.
You've
I
havered
don't
long
think
enough.
I don't think it's Frank. I think it's Robin.
Robin, he said it. Your bluff, and it's perfectly true. I say. Yes, I should tell you a Scodgy is indeed a household drudge, and so the score standing at 5-3. Who knows? Yes, Arthur Marshall's team has won. And spare a glance at the team who hoped they'd win, or supposed they would. Look! They're bearing up remarkably well. Anyway, another herd of white elephant from the plains of the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Until then, goodbye from Tim Brooke-Taylor. Robin Bailey, Rula Lenska, Clare Francis, Arthur Marshall, and Frank Muir.
Good night.
Goodbye. Hello, welcome to television's own version of Liar Dice, featuring, of course, Frank Muir.
Oh, hello. Good evening. It seems incredible to me that my first guest hasn't been on the show before, but she hasn't. So it gives me even more pleasure to say, and now from Woman's Hour, Sue MacGregor. And my next guest has been on the show dozens of times, so we don't need to bother about him. He's an actor, but it's okay, he's not bad. Derek Jacobi.
And, of course, we have that great midfield striker, Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Delighted to find myself with two old hands at the game of Call My Bluff, but old hands who still look very young hands. On my left, the beautiful Liza Goddard. And on my right, the admirable Julian Pettifer.
Well, now, let's get a word. This is what happens. I bang that bell, we get a word. Well, two words almost, niff-naff. And as you may recall, Frank Muir and his team will define niff-naff 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are no good, they're bogus. One's all right, and that's what Arthur will go try and pick out. So, Frank, niff-naff.
Well, Uncle, Arthur, niff-naff is a verb, actually. It's, I niff-naff, thou niff-naffest, or perhaps thou niffest-naffest. She or he niff-naffs. And it means to pay scant attention, to trifle with. Two gentlemen of the last century, early on, might have been said to be somebody who didn't niff-naff with a lady's affections.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And now, Derek Jacobi.
Niff-naff is, in fact, an adjective, an elderly adjective, and it describes a person who is remote and haughty and rather superior, rather like Frank when he's winning. And it's the equivalent of what we would now call hoity-toity. And in the parsonage at Haworth, there is a letter actually written by Charlotte Bronte to a friend which includes this word. And she said that she found the Egertons are noticeably niff-naff and decline to be intimate.
Let's see what Sue MacGregor has to say.
Well, it is a Victorian word, niff-naff. Now, you remember what antimacassars were or are. They're the things, little lace things you put like doilies on the backs of chairs, because Victorian men used to grease their hair with macassar oil, and antimacassars were anti the oil. Well, now, Cockneys in the East End of London thought this was a rather silly thing to do, something posh people did. So they invented a word for the antimacassar, and they called it, rather pejoratively, a niff-naff. And I wonder whether the word we use, naff, might even derive from niff-naff.
Who knows? Who knows? Yes. Something to think about. Well, it means to trifle with. It means to be haughty or hoity-toity, and it is the same thing as an antimacassar was. Arthur's choice?
Well, now, without much help from either of my team, on I go. This verb, to pay scant attention to niff-naff. Look me in the face.
Thou niffest-naffest.
Yeah, we had that before.
He, she, or it. I'm looking at.
Yes, you are.
What do you mean?
Then the adjective, remote, hoity-toity, haughty, and these quotations that are so glib, a Bronte quotation. Oh dear. Sue, we've been old friends for many years. On Woman's Eye. I can't believe you would ever lie to me. So I think it's your lovely antimacassar.
Let us see whether she teased you, Arthur. True or bluff? Oh, yes, indeed. Your glasses are steaming up, Arthur. Goodness me. Who gave the true definition of niff-naff?
Arthur, yes, thou niff-naff.
Yes, it means to trifle with, which is precisely what Frank did with Arthur and his team. Scattle is the next one, and Arthur will kick off.
Picture yourself in a slate quarry, and you see an apprentice slater wielding his scaddle. And you may wonder indeed what a scaddle is. Well, I will tell you. It's a thing like a butcher's cleaver made of cast iron with which he banged off the rough edges of the slate after it had been quarried to make it a nice smooth edge. Not very high-ranking job, but still, he serves.
Need a touch of skill, I would have said, for that.
Just
Arthur.
a
Yes,
touch.
yes. Julian Pettifer's turn.
Well, you know that there are very many dialect words all over the British Isles to describe farm animals, and indeed,
We get all of them in this
you get
program.
all of them, and the different characteristics of farming.
And illnesses.
This is such a word. This one comes from the West Riding of Yorkshire. Scaddle is used to describe a horse or other animal that is bad-tempered, that is mettlesome, that is difficult to handle, as in the phrase, "They can't ride yon horse, he's right scaddle."
Yeah.
Well done.
I think you verged on an accent there. Good. Jolly good. Now, Lisa Goddard.
A scaddle is the traditional Irish beehive from which Irish cottagers obtain their honey. Now, a scaddle lacks most of the amenities of a modern beehive. In fact, it's a dome-shaped affair made of woven straw, and it looks really more like a large wasp's nest. Sort of the thing you see in storybooks for children, those lovely round beehives.
Pop
Okay.
singer's hairdo.
It's, they say that it's a slater's cleaver, an Irish beehive, and a nervous or difficult animal. And Frank is to choose.
We are at least unanimously wrong. But we don't... Slater's hammers are called nappers, and it's called flint napping, and it certainly isn't called scaddles. Yorkshire... It's terribly easy to give a name to a naughty horse, and scaddle makes a good one, but we all think, we're quite firm in this, and we go down together in saying that it's at the beehive.
Now, it was Lisa who said that, true or bluff? Here it comes. Not a bit of it. No, not a bit of it. Nothing to do with
Naughty
beehives.
horse.
Must have something to do with the other two definitions. Which was it? The true one appears. Oh, yes, indeed. There. You dug a little pit for yourself there, Frank. Indeed, it is easy to give a name, and this is the proper name for a mettlesome or nervous or, skittish animal. 1-all, basilican, and Derek, it's your turn.
Well, about 400 years ago, if you suffered from any sort of skin blemish caused by any kind of disease, mentionable or unmentionable, you'd have gone out to your 400-year-old chemist and you would have bought either a tube or a pot or a jar of basilicum, and you would have put it on your skin blemishes wherever they happen to appear, and it would have given you instant relief and a rather quick cure. It's not made anymore, but the recipe for it has come down to us, and some of the ingredients included white wax, pine resin, and the suet of heifers.
At the bookshop in Cambridge.
Now it's Sue's turn.
Well, the basilicon, it's an ancient Greek word in a way. It's the basilicon was a book, a set of rules, if you like. It was a scholarly translation of the Roman law, which had to be translated back into Greek, if you get my meaning, because it was under the orders of the Emperor Justinian in the 6th century AD, and it was produced for all those people who were administering the Byzantine Empire but couldn't speak Latin. So they had to have it all down in Greek. And it was in the basilicon for that reason.
My dear, I've never heard such a mouthful in one. Well done.
You should take notes.
I was going to say, yes, I thought you were
Brilliant.
scribbling away there.
Brilliant.
Now it's your turn, Frank.
Well, basilicon is, quite simply, is a phosphate of iron and limestone occurring in spheroidal concretions in Bohemia.
Could we have that middle bit again? Spheroidal...
Concretions.
Yes,
It's a simple
yes.
word, Arthur. Look it up when you get home. And presumably in Bohemia, if they wanted to do cannonballs, they just got the spade out and dug in the back garden. But that is the definition of it.
Good, good. Well, it's this phosphate of iron and various things. It's a sort of ointment 400 years old, I think you said, and it's a digest of Roman law. Julian, you pick.
Well, all this disgusting suet of heifers, Derek, I don't know. That sounds a bit like your imagination, I think. This phosphate of iron, Frank, it's very boring, isn't it?
Very boring. Brief but boring.
Yes, that's right. Therefore, I mean, I think just for fun, I think it's going to be those Justinian's rules.
You think it is? It was Sue. You're choosing that, right?
I'm choosing that, yes.
Sue MacGregor, true or bluff? Not Oh, she's pulling your leg again. Who gave the true definition? It's there.
Oh, it's
Do you know, you said it was 400 years old, but I swear my mother had it in the medicine cabinet when I was a lad. I'm not 400 years old. Appearances notwithstanding. 2-1. Armet or arme, I really don't know. Julian knows better.
Well, an armet was a soldier's headgear. It was a hat or a helmet that first became fashionable in the 15th century. It was nothing very particularly interesting about it. It was a sort of iron cap, but it did have one distinguishing feature that made it popular with the soldiery, and that was that it actually had a sort of skirt or pelmet that of stiff metal that hung down the back and helped you not to be decapitated, and I suppose helped to keep off the sun, the mosquitoes, or even the cold drafts. It was a helmet with a skirt down the back.
Right, sounds very useful. Now, Lisa.
Well, an armet is an equine aperitif. It's something, a confection, which one gives to one's horse if it's gone off its feed. In other words, refuses to stick its nose in its nose bag. No use to my horse because she never goes off her feed. Anyway, a typical armet that's highly recommended is a mixture of honey and white breadcrumbs with a little sprinkling of nutmeg and cinnamon.
Sounds all right.
Very
Good
nice.
for breakfast.
Good for what ails you, yes. Arthur Marshall now.
The correct pronunciation is armée, because it is French. And it's the name of the Frenchman Paul-Édouard Armé, who around 1820 invented a particular kind of gas lamp. What gas, you ask? I will tell you.
I didn't ask at all. I'm not at all interested.
Show interest, Frank.
No.
It was methane or marsh gas, and Monsieur Armé had airtight tanks filled with rotting vegetation and, I am afraid, other things. Do you remember in the war that car that ran entirely on chicken droppings?
Yes.
Well, I don't doubt they figured in Monsieur Armé's tanks
No doubt they did.
to supply the gas for his lovely lamp.
Could we pass on another switch?
I thought it had a certain shapeliness there. Gas lamp it was, a French gas lamp, helmet with a skirt at the back, and a horse's draft. A draft for a horse. Derek, I think, it's your choice.
Absolutely no idea at all. Julian's headgear, 15th century, skirted, pelmeted helmet. Yes, possible. An excretal gas lamp. Again, possible. Ingenious. And the horse's medicine, the honey, white breadcrumbs and cinnamon and nutmeg. And I've absolutely no idea. They could all be possible. I think it's a pelmeted helmet.
Helmet with a pelmet. Yes, Julian said that. True or bluff? Let's see whether you did well. Oh, yes, he did. That's absolutely right. An armet is a helmet with a little sort of skirt at the back of it. Palu is the next word. Sue MacGregor to define it.
Well, the word is almost defined in itself, I think, palu. You've heard of it. It means a paler shade of yellow, sort of the colour of, if you're watching us on a colour set, the colour of the velvet behind us. Saffron, pale saffron, egg yolk, yellow.
That's velvet.
My eyesight's very bad tonight. The answer is a lemon. That's what it is.
I think it's only plastic, you know. It's not. Anyway, it might not be. Frank, it's your turn.
And have you ever considered Evensong and you're sitting there, and the organ's playing, and there's the lady of 90 who's pumping the bellows until the weight goes between the two chalk marks. And the organist is playing, and he somehow permits the air to go from her reservoir to the note. And so when he presses one of his keys down, some sort of valve somewhere must open and allow the air from the reservoir to flow in and go, and operate that, the pallium. Pallium is this little valve in an organ. It's also bellows, round hole in the top, and underneath there's a little leather flap which goes as you do. That's also a pallium.
Graphic as ever.
Yes. Little touch of the Henry Irvings there. Derek, your turn.
If you were an 18th century country squire and you were off for a little hunting, shooting, fishing, a little evicting of peasants from their cottages, you would perhaps don your pallium, which was a loose-fitting cloak or a short cape. It was a very useful garment, but it was also a very decorative garment. There's, on record, there's a pallium that was worn by Lord Henry Cavendish in the late 18th century, which was made of moleskin and richly patterned silk.
Okay, well, it's sort of a cape. A species of yellow, a paler yellow, and a valve in an organ. Lisa, your choice?
Well, I'm going to go... for a start, I don't think really it's Frank's bellows flap. Sorry, or his organ valve. And I'm not sure... Sorry, Frank. 18th century loose-fitting cape sounds lovely, but I'm going for the obvious Sue's paler shade of yellow just because it's a mixture of pale and yellow, almost.
There's a certain logic to it, I will grant you. Let's see whether it was well applied. True or bluff, Sue? Very much so. A paler shade of yellow is what it is. Mashwa is the next word, and it's Lisa Goddard's turn.
Should you ever opt to go sailing off the coast of Zanzibar, you'd be better off to do it in a mashwa. Because, you see, the mashwa is a small, open sailing boat, and it's got a forward-facing mast and a rounded stern, which is ideally designed to adapt to cope with the variable winds off the coast of Zanzibar.
Just the thing. Right. Arthur Marshall now.
The mashwa is a unit of weight in Senegal. Being roughly 15 grains troy, which I need hardly tell you is about 1/10 of an ounce. And in the old days, they used to make it equivalent to the seed of a particular kind of Senegalese bean called the Phaseolus mango. This
You've got everything there.
Before the days of little weights, so they had to have something that weighed what...
You've got everything except rhyme there. Marvellous, marvellous. Now, let's try Julian, see what he says.
Mashwa, or mashwa, is an exclamation of surprise uttered by an Irishman, actually. And it actually comes from the Gaelic, and I suppose you could roughly translate it as, is that really so? Or, is that really the case? Something like that. Yes. As Derek will certainly know, from his knowledge of the plays of Sean O'Casey, he'll probably recognise this quotation from The Plough and the Stars. Mashwa, exclaims Marty Houlihan, and wouldn't I be the first man in Ball's Bridge to set it right?
Of course, potatoes, mash. Very clever.
Well, then it's a boat
Very
off
clever.
Zanzibar. It's a unit of weight in Senegal, and it's an Irish exclamation. Sue to choose.
Well, the trouble is, you see, Lisa's boat sounded terribly right, mashwa, especially the different shape, so it could deal with the winds off the Zanzibari coast. So I'm not going to go for that. It sounded too good to me. I wasn't at all impressed with Arthur's unit of Senegalese weight.
No, rubbish.
It was the equivalent of, what did you say, the seed of a bean with Mungo Park in there somewhere. It was very strange. Arthur, I don't go for that. And I'm a bit doubtful about... I'm always doubtful about quotations. However, one at least of my fellow panellists thinks that Julian is telling the truth.
Me.
Even
It's
in
Frank,
spite of the accent,
even though he
yes.
jested about mashed potatoes and all that. So we'll go for the Irish exclamation of surprise.
Yes, indeed. That was what Julian said. Say it, he did. True or bluff? It wasn't a bad accent, but it was a bogus definition. Who gave the true definition? The real one.
Not the boat. Come on.
No, yes, indeed.
No.
It's the boat off Zanzibar.
The
3
boats are
all.
always bluffs. Black bottom Mediterranean
Except when
boats.
they aren't. That's the trouble, isn't it, with this game?
Not fair.
Let's have a look at this word. Curtal, I would say. Frank, your go.
Don't know how it's pronounced.
Don't sulk.
Cheer up.
You know what it is? A curtal is a bird fancier's nomenclature for a white cockatoo, all white cockatoo. That's a little parrot with that sort of punk hairstyle like that. And there's a thing on record that a curtal in 1892 in the British Gazette, which was a kind of selling paper, it was like kind of exchange of mart. There was a curtal advertised with very friendly to children for 2 shillings and 9pence. I just mentioned that.
Sounds like a bargain.
Divert
Whose
your
turn is it
attention
now?
from the
Yes,
true
it
one.
is Derek Jacobi's turn.
Well, Henry VIII used to pleasure all of his wives with the curtal because he could play it. It was a musical instrument, and it was rather like a sawn-off bassoon or an elongated oboe. It didn't have a very pleasant sound. It sounded very harsh, very reedy. But it was a great favourite with Henry, and a great favourite with the public. And it was used in many orchestrations in Tudor music.
Right. Sue MacGregor now.
I do know how to pronounce it. It's a curtal, and as I hope you'll guess, it's a Scots word. Curtal is a kind of limestone that you can still find on the outskirts of Edinburgh, the bit that faces towards Dunfermline. It's very important to remember that. And in the old days, when Scots housewives used to whiten their front doorsteps, they would go out towards Dunfermline and pick up bits of curtal and break it down into powder and then scrub the step and make it beautifully white. That's what it is.
Well. So, it's a young cockatoo. No, it's a white cockatoo, he said.
Could
It's
be
a musical instrument, and it's sort of limestone. Now, Arthur's choice.
Arthur Defoe.
Arthur Minute.
No, silence from my right, help from my left.
Probably useless.
Oh, my locks, really. This Scottish limestone on the doorstep does seem awfully likely. Well, then you see Henry VIII's instrument, musical instrument. Sounds tremendously probable. I'm terribly fond of cockatoos, such friendly birds. But, of course, when you give the date 1892, it may be costing 2 and 9.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, law. No, it's Henry VIII's musical instrument.
Ah, now, let's see. It was Derek Jacobi, I think, who said that. Yes, he did. True or bluff? It's a bullseye. It is indeed a musical instrument played allegedly by Henry VIII, or certainly at that time. Opsony is the next word, and Arthur is going to tell you about it.
Rather an interesting word, a very old gastronomic word, meaning absolutely anything that is eaten with a piece of bread. May I suggest a few? A pat of butter? Blob, a blob of marmalade, a section of pâté, anything that you put on bread and munch down is an old word. Opsony is the old word for that.
Yes, well, let's see what Julian says.
Well, I must confess that I don't really understand how an opsony works. It is a scientific instrument which you hold in the hand, and it works in I believe, somewhat on the principle of a maritime sextant. except it is actually used for scanning the contours of a hill. It's I presume, used in map making or something of that kind.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Quite useful, I should think. Now, Lisa, what does she say?
Opsony is, in Scottish law, a particular kind of conspiracy in which two or more persons conspire to effect a purpose harmful upon an individual.
Oh, lovely. Yes, that's very good.
Oh, right, yes, that was all meat there.
Was, yes.
Yes, it's a kind of a morsel, something you pop in your mouth as long as you've got a bit of bread with it. It's a kind of conspiracy, and it's a sort of sextant. Frank?
May I dive in so that we can win the next... win this one and then the
Don't
next one?
tread water.
Well, no, it's Arthur. It's got to be Arthur.
Oh,
At least I want it to be a bit of something on bread.
You dove?
Yes, I dove. Not so much the Scottish law or the instrument, but Arthur's bit of something on bread.
Okay,
Put the oven in
Arthur,
misery.
true or That was well doved there. Well, we do have just nice, comfortable time now for the decider, which is, well, I'd say ooge, I think. Derek?
We always lose this one.
No, wait and see.
It's an ooga, and it's a clasp. It's a Plantagenet English word, and it's a clasp that fits on a buckle for the two sides of a garment, like a tunic or a cloak.
Right, now it's Sue MacGregor's go.
Well, it's an auge, and it's what medieval huntsmen used to use to pull the deer that they'd shot out of a thicket. It's a very elaborate rope. You put it round the unfortunate beast when it was dead, and you pulled hard and ouged it out. That's what an auge is.
Now we'll whiz on to Frank.
Hard, compacted rock, would you buy? Which is almost inevitably found around precious metal bearing ore veins.
Oh, you stop there. There's no way you could
Is
top
that
it,
it?
is there?
Well done.
Well, it's a precious metal ore bearing thing, rock. It's a net that they used to tangle animals in and drag them once they killed them, and a sort of buckle or clasp. So, who chooses? Yes, I think it's Julian.
It is, yes. I'm very stuck between these medieval buckles and this medieval huntsman's thing. It sounds to me like a medieval sort of word. I don't much care for this hard, compacted rock, so it's really a question of whether it's...
I urge you to dive
I shall go for the medieval buckle or clasp.
The buckle, Derek, true or bluff? No! We need very quickly to hear who gave the true definition of this interesting word. Yes, auge, ooge, or auga, pronounce it as you will, is ore-bearing rock bearing precious metal. Well, there you are. Wasn't it exciting? I thought it was. And I was sitting here. I was here all the time. It was 4-4, then it suddenly was 4-5, and I have to announce that Frank Muir's team has won. And Arthur Marshall's team scarcely lost, did they, really? Well, only up to a point. Anyway, we'll have another sort of jumble sale from the Oxford English Dictionary next week. Until then, goodbye from Derek Jacobi.
Goodbye.
Julian Pettifer. Sue MacGregor. Lisa Goddard. Frank Muir.
Bye.
And Arthur Marshall. Goodbye. This is Call My Bluff, and in Trap 1 we have Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Here we are fighting gamely back after our hair's breadth defeat of last week with, on my left, Liza Goddard. And on my right, Julian Pettifer.
An old lofty Frank Muir.
And of course, we have again our narrowly winning team of Women's Hours Sue MacGregor. And the theatres, Derek Jacobi.
Jacobi, of course. But there, let's ring the bell and see what happens. Yes, it did it again. Pantoum is our first word. And let me remind myself, pantoum is to be defined 3 different ways by Arthur and his team. 2 of the definitions are stumers, no good, one's okay, and that's the one that Frank and Co. try and find. So what about pantoum, Arthur?
A pantoum is a verse or a mini-poem in Tamil, which I hardly need to remind you is one of the chief languages of Malaysia. It's a rather jolly little quatrain of 4 lines. Lines 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 rhyme. And the whole point is that it should be funny. And they throw them off in an extempore manner on some droll or comical subject in Tamil. What passes for droll or comic in Tamil, I couldn't be telling you. That is what a pantoum is.
Trouble at Tamil.
No. I'm just about to say, no danger of an accent there, a dialect there, but we got it. Will I, nil I. Julian, your go.
On the contrary, a pantoum or a pantoum, as the word is French, was in fact a pasteboard puppet with jointed limbs and head that was very popular with children in the 1800s. It was the invention of a Belgian lady called Madame Berenice Pantoum, and her only other claim to fame is that she was a mistress of one of Napoleon's generals, Maréchal Saxe.
I don't think we want that sort of gossip on the programme, if you don't mind.
Not before the children.
Let's invite Lisa to tell us.
Pantoum is a Moroccan cosmetic with which Moroccan ladies, or quite possibly the ladies of the Casbah in Algiers, seek to improve upon their bodily allure. It's actually a body powder, and it's distinctly scented with oil of patchouli. And how they apply it is not with a powder puff, as you'd probably think.
The shovel.
And also with a little brush made of camel hair.
So it's a sort of puppet. It's a poem in Tamil and a kind of cosmetic. Frank chooses.
Yeah. Well, of course, there's no problem at all. We're not terribly happy, Arthur, with your rather overextended explanation of the Tamil mini-verse. It was well enough done, but fairly well enough done. Pasteboard Puppet was interesting, particularly with the record of the ladies' predilections. We rather think that it's the cosmetic applied with a shovel.
Lisa, you said that, didn't you?
It
Own
sounds
up, true
like
or
it.
bluff, here it comes.
No.
Nothing. No. Wasn't that? You shouldn't have said that about the shovel. You were there. No.
We had no idea.
Who gave the
what
two
answer.
definitions of pantoum?
No.
Yes. It is the Tamil poem that Arthur so modestly refused to give you a touch of.
No. He is a cunning
Not
old
now.
fox.
Sharga or Sharja, I wonder. Frank.
Cant word, old doss houses, last century, for a rather coarse blanket, that's all. And for a halfpenny, you could get floor space and a sharga or sharja, and you wrapped yourself around it and went off into your dreams. For a penny, you could lean against a rope. It really was floor space and this sort of covering thing. Sharja.
Right.
Don't know why it's called that.
Derek Jacobi's turn now.
A sharga is a term used in the antique furniture business, and it means a hidden compartment in a desk or bureau or escritoire. What happens is that you pull the drawer out, and at the back of the drawer there's a false back to the drawer, and behind that false back there's an oblong cavity, and that is the secret compartment. That is the sharga. It means that you can only see it if you pull the drawer right out. If you pull the drawer a little way out, but you have to pull it right out to see beyond the back of the drawer. That's a sharga.
Right enough. Let us Sue.
I have to tell you that it's pronounced sharger. It's a Scots word. I can remember my mother referring not to me but to other children as being a bit sharger. It means a weak or undernourished person, particularly when applied to a child. That child's a bit sharger. The Scots are not a sentimental race, but they are extremely kind and very literary. And there is a Victorian novel which uses the word sharger, which explains it utterly. I think this is the sentence I'd like to quote to you. Mist mithers gien there be a sharger among the bairns, mac mera that ein, nor a the lave putting together. What more can I say?
Well done, Elizabeth. You missed your métier, I see that. A spontaneous burst of applause. Well done. It's a weakly, a sort of feeble child, Scots. It's a sort of hidden compartment in an old bureau or the like, and it's a rather coarse blanket. Arthur makes his choice.
Sue, that was absolutely lovely. Couldn't have been more marvellous. We turned it down at once. So we come either to a blanket or a hidden compartment.
Or a hidden compartment in a blanket.
Frank's terrible doss house blanket, one starts to wonder what the blanket... Oh, never mind, anyway. It may well be that, but on the whole, it would be so wonderful to invent a word for a hidden compartment in the antique furniture. Derek, I think tend to think this side, that it's your hidden compartment.
He said that. Derek Jacobi, true or bluff?
Hit him, Eric.
Hit him, Eric.
No. No, it wasn't that. One of the others. It has to be.
Oh, it was.
Yes. Yes. It is indeed what Sue MacGregor said it was. It's a weakly child, a feeble infant, or even person. Scuddock's the next word Julian Pettifer defined.
Well, scuddock is very simply a sort of sluice gate. It is a shutter which is used by millers to raise and lower in order to adjust the flow of water onto the mill wheel. That is, what more can I say?
Well, yes, that's good enough. Lisa.
Well, a scuddock is a subspecies of brown trout found only in the adjoining lakes of Bala and Bernwy in West Wales. Now, sadly, due to its isolation of others of its kind, and hence inbreeding, the scuddock has become very delicate and prone to disease. Also, its flesh is so bland as to be virtually tasteless.
Okay.
That's a scuddock.
Let's get rid of it.
Let us invite Arthur to speak now.
A scuddock is, in modern terms, what we would call a half pea or a pea. In the olden days, before decimalisation, it would have been called a farthing or a halfpenny. In other words, a very, very tiny coin of now very little value. So in the old days, if you heard somebody say, has scary a ruddock.
Don't try the accents, Arthur. Don't leave them alone.
The accent is a mistake, Arthur.
Yes, the accent. He has nary a scuddock.
Nary a scuddock.
Scary and
He
utter.
has nary a scuddock means that he's skint or penniless. I do apologise.
No, there's slang you're going in for. Skint, indeed. Well, there it is. It's a part of Millgate. It's a brown trout, not very tasty, and it's a small coin, nary a scudder. Derek, you choose.
No? What do you... Sorry. Yes. A simple miller's sluice gate. Yes, possible. A poor brown trout who's not very good and doesn't taste very nice and is rather ill, and we're very sorry for him. And that wonderful performance, Arthur. Thank you. You learn so much in this programme about the art of acting. The coin. Well, all plausible, beautifully done. I think, and my teammates don't agree, do you? No, they dissociate themselves from this. But I
think it's the sluice gate.
The sluice gate. Julian Pettifer said that it was. True or bluff?
Oh.
No, it wasn't that. It must have been one of the others. Let's see which it was.
Oh, it's...
It was scary another, or nary a scudder. Just the thing. Want more of those? A scudder is just what Arthur nearly said it was. Boccarella is the next one. Derek Jacobi.
Boccarella is how it sounds. It is a dance. It is a Spanish Andalusian dance. But it is a highly inflammatory, overtly sexual dance. As such, it is disapproved of very much by the Catholic Church, and certainly in the 16th century there were many edicts, particularly a famous one by the Cardinal of Seville, banning the performing of the Boccarella with dire penalties for whoever danced it publicly. It was done quite a lot in private.
Used an dictaphone.
Yes. Sue MacGregor.
Well, that explanation was quite good. In fact, it does have continental associations. It's a gypsy Romany word meaning cattle stall, but in fact, in 18th century England, it meant the nick, the prison, the Boccarella. And anyone old enough to be able to remember Oxford in 1771 would remember that there was a prison there. It was pulled down in 1771 at Northgate in Oxford, and it was known by the unfortunate people in it as the prison, but the undergraduates called it rather more poshly the Boccarella.
Yes. Now, it's Frank Muir's turn.
Glassmaking, ornamental glassmaking, came originally from Venice and was imported into these islands, the rest of Europe, from the Venetian islands. So a lot of glassmaking terms have Venetian overtones, like Boccarella is like Baccarel, which is the
shut up.
Gondolier song. And Boccarella is you know how you make glass? Of course you do, Arthur.
Of course.
Many a time in your kitchen. It's a fusion of sand and potash. But how do you know how the fusion's getting on? You've got to look through a hole, you see, in the furnace with blazing heat and everything. And the peephole that your expert looks through to see how the potash and sand is fusing or isn't is called, what's it called? A Boccarella. Boccarella from the Venetian beginnings.
Yes, well, it was a prison in Oxford, a peephole in the glass furnace when you're making glass, and a dance they tried to stamp out in Andalusia. Julian, your choice.
Well, Derek, I mean, you know, from a Shakespearean actor, will there dance the Boccarella? Yes, I mean, obvious to give it to you, wasn't it? A sort of sexy knees up. A gypsy Romany nick. What? 17, I don't know. Glass making. All that. On the other hand, I think it probably was that boring dance of Derek's, actually. Yes.
The dance they tried to stamp out. True or bluff? Derek Jacobi. Owns up.
Again.
No. Wasn't that? Who gave the true definition of Boccarella?
Daddy.
Peephole in a glass furnace. 2-2. Let's have another word. Churl, I don't know. Liza Goddard tells you.
A churl is a variety of ghost that is said and believed by some to haunt the Indian subcontinent. Now, the churl is a ghost of an extremely malignant woman, and she's supposed to haunt lonely crossroads. Now, she's instantly recognisable because her feet are on backwards. That is the churl.
Very worrying. Arthur Marshall's go.
I don't know how recently you've attended a wedding in Armenia. But if you have, you would have been very astonished in the middle of the ceremony to find 4 gentlemen coming in with an enormous canopy propped up on 4 poles and holding it over the heads of the bride and bridegroom, and it's to indicate the house that they will be inhabiting after the ceremony. A tiny canopy, a tiny churl means a bungalow. A large churl would mean a large mansion. Sometimes the canopies are so big they can hardly be got into the church.
You get a semi-detached churl.
Yes, indeed.
Right, it is now Julian Pettifer's turn.
Chorelle was a name given to a condition of allergic dermatitis by the French colonial doctors in Indochina. Fortunately, in 1909, they discovered that this acute condition was actually caused by the pollen and the spores from a particular kind of local broad bean. And having once identified this, they were able to overcome this severe affliction to the great joy of the inhabitants of Indochina.
They say then it's a sort of a ghost. It's this skin disease and a canopy used at a marriage, of course, in Armenia. Sue.
Well, now, Arthur's Armenian wedding canopy sounded very much like the Jewish wedding canopy, and I've never heard that called a churl or a churel, so I didn't go for, although convincing though you were, Arthur, I don't go for and Julian's allergic dermatitis from the spore of an Indo-Chinese bean sounded almost unlikely enough to be the right answer, but I go for Lisa, because although the Indian ghost lady had feet on backwards, and although I don't believe there are many crossroads in India, just the word sounded Indian. It sounded of the subcontinent to me, so I'll go for that ghostly lady haunting the crossroads, yes.
Well, that's what Lisa said. Lisa Goddard, true or bluff? Yes. Well done. A churl or churl is indeed an Indian ghost, and the lady has her feet on backwards. Cornely, I don't know. Sue.
Well, anyone who's had to do chain stitch and embroidery knows what an awfully difficult stitch it is. You often have to do an awful lot of it, and it's a bit of a fag. It's rather boring. But help is at hand, as anyone who has done embroidery by machine will know, because there is something called the corneli, which you can do chain stitch with, and it was invented by a man called, a Frenchman, in fact, qui s'appelle Émile Corneli. And anyone who is a...
Pardon?
Émile...
Encore une fois, chérie.
Tiens. Émile Corneli. And if you were a lazy chain stitcher, Arthur, you would bless his invention.
Indeed.
That's a Corneli.
I think stitching chains must be frightfully heavy work.
Oh, yes. Now, Frank, pick it up from there.
Well, I'm not, in fact, in a position to do so, because mine is very, very dull. Because corneli is a dull, reddish sort of quartz, geologically affiliated to the chalcedony type of gem. And in the old days, it used to be used a lot because it's quite easy to work as the basis of seals. It was the bit that you stamped into the seal, and also for signet rings. It's semi-interesting, but not very exciting.
Well, let's see what Derek Jacobi has to say.
Eric Jacobi. Well, mine isn't very interesting either. It's a bit dull, but it's the right one. And it is, in fact, an adjective. It is describing something which is cornel-ly, which means that it is characterized by possessing cornels. It is marked by several cornels, so it is called corneli. Now, Windsor Castle you could call corneli. Now, you don't know what a cornel is, or a cornel. I'm about to tell you. Cornel is an architectural term, and it means a battlement or an embrasure. So anything that is decorated with many battlements or embrasures can be described as being full of cornels, corneli.
So then, it's a chain stitching device, a machine for doing it. It's architecture distinguished by the presence of cornels or cornels, and it's that rather dull quartz. So, Lisa.
We are conferring.
Julie.
Just a sec.
Oh, certainly. Please have a second.
Carry on. Right. Okay, now, Sue's machine for chain stitching sounds absolutely wonderful. Of course, it should have been invented, even if it wasn't, by Mr. Cornelis. And Derrick's battlement-encrusted Cornelis. No, it's a Cornelis.
That's it, yes.
I don't think I'll go for that because I can't say it.
Not allowed.
So I think I'll go for Frank's dull reddish quartz because it's so
quartz.
dull.
Well, he did say it, didn't he?
He did
Yes.
say it
True
was
or
dull.
bluff, Frank?
Briefly,
There.
I got the quartz
Well
into a
up.
pint pot.
Now, it wasn't anything to do with quartz. Who gave the true definition of Cornelis?
C'est le monsieur.
Excellent. It is a machine invented by a Frenchman to do chain stitching, whatever that may be. Scartling is the next word, and Arthur will tell you about it.
A scartling is a sample of something or a specimen of something. And you still hear the word occasionally in rural country markets where a farmer thinks that he's got a particularly good crop of wheat or whatever it may be, and he takes a handful of wheat in his pocket to market. And to show what lovely wheat it is, he pulls it out and says, "Here be my scarf."
Arthur.
Darling.
Dear.
He's a Polish farmer.
I was doing sort of Wiltshire. Well, never mind. Anyhow, it's a sample or a specimen.
Yes,
right. Julian Pettifer's turn.
Well, if you were lucky enough to go out bird watching with, somebody who really knew about birds, and Peter Scott or David Attenborough or somebody like that, and Bilotti, yes, and you wanted to impress them, as somebody who knew a robin from a Rhode Island red, then what you would say if you spotted an adolescent cormorant, a cormorant with adolescent plumage, you would say, a scartling, you'd say, and they'd be tremendously impressed because that's what it is. It's an adolescent cormorant, and you will, of course, have guessed that it is a diminutive of the word scart, which in the sort of Ochai parts of Scotland is the term for an adult cormorant.
Right. Let us hear from Lisa Goddard.
Scartling is an oiled linen, once used chiefly as an interlining for curtains in stately homes. Now, its function was to be draught-proof, you see, because with heavy curtains, often made of tapestry, the wind would whistle through the perforations of the tapestry, so they had to have this oiled linen as an interlining to stop that happening. Because they were beautiful but cold, the curtains.
Oiled linen, let it be then. A cormorant, a young cormorant, and a sample or specimen of something. Frank, your choice.
Yeah. Well, we both feel that, what's his name, the gentleman on the left, getting old, that your adolescent cormorant is probably not the truth. I know I heard of a scart and a ling. A ling is an adolescent something by itself, isn't it? We're really torn between Arthur's specimen, which I've got down here, not a very good note, and the oiled linen. I don't quite understand why the oiled linen, why there should be drafts through the arras when they...
Because they were in front of the windows, and the windows were drafty.
Wouldn't have tapestry in front of windows.
Don't give light.
Doesn't make sense. So we'll go for that.
Yes, the oiled linen. Now, Lisa, you did say that. Now you have to own up. True or bluff? Nothing. You said yourself it was daft. Frank, they would put tapestries in front of me. No,
I'm
no,
daft.
No. Who gave the true definition of scartling?
No. Not
Oh, yes, it is. It's an adolescent cormorant, is what it is. 4-3. Here we go. Vuggy is the next one, Frank.
Voogie, boogie. It was a very coarse woolen overall worn by Lancashire mill women, sort of industrial revolution time, early 19th century.
All right. Derek, your turn.
Buggy. First World War, Australian, how they described mutton hash. Particularly a special kind of tin mutton hash, which they believed was made from rather elderly Egyptian sheep. Buggy.
Right now, Sue.
Buggy, this is the real one. Buggy, you could use buggy to describe, say, Gruyere cheese, or a rather poor set of teeth, or perhaps bachelor's rather old socks. And it doesn't mean smelly. It means full of holes, full of cavities. All them socks are vuggy, you could say. And you'd be correct.
Mm-hmm. Means anything that's full of holes. It also means tinned hash. And it also is an overall. So Arthur has to pick his way through those.
Well, I'm a bachelor and I have socks, dear. I don't like to hear them decried in that manner. Never mind, I freely forgive you. Oh, my looks. We've had such a lot of Australia recently. Australian hash made... Why Egyptian sheep? Well, never mind.
Only one's available.
It sounds perfectly
Egypt,
horrible.
you know.
I don't think it's Sue's Holib thing. I think it's Frank's coarse overall.
Course overall. Did
you
you
say it was
spoke
a
with
course
Frank? True or
over-
bluff?
I'm able to answer that.
Oh,
Can we have the true definition of vuggy? We do need to know.
Is that basically Australian? Oh, no, it's...
oh, it's that.
Yes. It does mean anything that's full of holes. Shall we try a last one very quickly? Yes. Figging is the next one, and you must be intensely brief, Julian.
Yes, I shall be very, very brief indeed. Figging is actually a carpet which was laid down in front of the powder magazine or in front of the guns in men of war in order to stop explosions.
Lisa, even quicker.
In the soap-making industry, figging is tallow added to the vat of soap to make it curdle and go granulated.
Difficult to be briefer about that than that, wasn't
Irish
it?
allotment garden.
Lovely, Arthur. Oh, how brief that was. An allotment, a mat used for that purpose, and he's adding tallow to soap. Derek?
Soap.
Soap, sorry,
Soap.
soap. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I want. Soap.
Soap?
Yeah.
Lisa?
Oh,
soap.
yeah.
True or bluff? Well, it's nice to make it a very definite win, isn't it? Oh, wonderful. Yes, yeah. Very exciting. Then. So there you have it. 6-3. Frank Muir's team has won. Yes, indeed. But I don't really think Arthur minds. Look at him. We'll get some more from the rag and bone end of the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Until then, goodbye from Julian Pettifer, Derek Jacobi, Lisa Goddard, Sue MacGregor, Arthur Marshall, and Frank Muir. Goodbye.